Hello everyone. Before we get started, make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying where you're from and when you watched. That way, YouTube will continue to show you stories like this. Now, let's get started. Asterisk, in a small, peaceful town where low-rise houses are nestled close together under the shade of old trees. There is an old kindergarten built decades ago. Outside, the paint has peeled off the walls, revealing moldy, mottled bricks. Inside, dim light shines through the opaque glass windows, creating long, thin streaks of light on the dull wooden floor. The house has nurtured many generations of children, but at the same time, it also carries with it creepy rumors that the locals often whisper to each other. Emma, a young teacher who has just arrived in town, is hired to work at this kindergarten. With her gentle smile and warm voice, Emma quickly wins the hearts of the children. But then she begins to notice that there is a special baby, Lily, only about 2 years old, who always acts strangely. Something Emma has never seen in any child. Every time Emma took Lily into the playroom, her eyes were not directed to the colorful toys or the wooden blocks scattered on the floor. Instead, Lily always looked up at the ceiling, her bright, clear eyes like mirrors, attentively watching a certain point above. Then she smiled. That smile was not innocent like other children's, but had something creepy, lingering, sometimes giggling as if she was talking to someone. Emma initially thought it was just normal childish behavior, like when they created an imaginary world. But after a few weeks, she realized something was wrong. Lily not only looked at the ceiling while playing, but also when eating, when sleeping. Even in the middle of the night, she suddenly woke up, her eyes still fixed on a dark point above. And then, that smile appeared again. One afternoon, when the drizzle was falling outside the window, Emma stayed late to clean up the toys. Lily had not yet been picked up by her parents. The room was empty, the rain pattered against the glass. Suddenly, Emma heard a giggle. She turned around and saw Lily sitting on the floor, her head tilted back, her eyes glued to the dark ceiling. Her smile was so wide that her cheeks were crinkled, as if someone was up there making fun of her. Emma shivered. She looked up, but saw only the old, cracked, dusty wooden ceiling. Nothing, but Lily waved her hand, her lips moving as if she were whispering to an invisible person. Emma walked over, bent down, and asked softly, "What are you looking at, Lily?" She didn't answer, just laughed louder, her small hand raised high in the air, then suddenly pointed straight to the dark corner of the room where the light couldn't reach. Emma's heart was pounding. A cold air came from somewhere, making her skin crawl. She quickly picked Lily up, trying to distract her with toys. But Lily still stretched her neck, her eyes following the darkness, her mouth still showing a strange smile. That night, Emma lay in bed, unable to sleep. The image of the child laughing ecstatically in the dark room haunted her. She remembered the rumors in town, that this nursery had been a small hospital during the war, where many patients had died in pain. It was said that their souls had never left, still lingering somewhere on the old walls. The more she thought about it, the more chills ran down Emma's spine. But she couldn't share it with anyone, afraid that people would think she was delusional. She reassured herself that it was just a child's fantasy. However, deep in her mind, Emma clearly felt that something was looking back from that darkness, and Lily was the only one who could see it. In the following days, things became more and more confusing. Other teachers began to notice Lily's strange behavior. Several other children followed Lily's gaze, crying out incoherently. At night, Emma dreamed of children's laughter echoing in the dark hallway. When she woke up, her heart was pounding, and she was covered in cold sweat. Every step in the nursery felt heavy and endless to Emma. She heard a faint tapping on the ceiling, as if someone was moving above, but when she checked, there was no trace. That Emma began to wonder, was she the only one who heard and saw those things? Or had the whole town known all along, but chosen to remain silent? The story of Lily and the invisible laughter had only just begun, and then even more terrible things would appear, dragging Emma into a mysterious and terrifying spiral that she could never have imagined. The following days, Emma tried to concentrate on her work, but her mind kept spinning with the image of Lily sitting and laughing under the ceiling. The uneasiness was like a haunting shadow, following her every minute and every hour. Even when standing in the hallway, Emma still felt like there were invisible eyes watching her from above. One gloomy morning, the sky was covered with thick grey clouds. The wind whistled through the wooden window, making the sound last like someone's sigh. When Emma entered the classroom, she saw Lily already sitting in a corner of the room. Her eyes were looking up at the old, cracked ceiling. Soft laughter escaped from Lily's throat, making the normally quiet room suddenly cold to the point of suffocation. Emma approached, softly asking Lily what she was looking at. But as usual, she did not answer, just held out her small hand towards the invisible darkness. At that moment, the other children in the room simultaneously turned to look in the direction Lily was pointing. A few children immediately burst into tears, as if they too had sensed the presence. The air suddenly became heavy, as if someone was squeezing every breath. Feeling uneasy, Emma led the class out to the playground, hoping the daylight would calm them down. But as the weak sunlight broke through the clouds, Lily still looked up at the sky and smiled. This time, the smile made Emma's skin crawl more than ever. It wasn't the innocent joy of a child, but rather a response to something no one but Lily could see. That afternoon, when the parents came to pick up their children, a mother named Mrs. Collins approached Emma. Her voice was filled with concern. "Teacher Emma, lately my child has been crying and screaming when he comes home, pointing at the ceiling in his bedroom. She said he sees someone there." She tried to reassure herself that it was probably just a nightmare, but her face was pale. Her eyes filled with fear, as if she had been holding it in for too long. Emma swallowed, not knowing how to respond. Rumors of the nursery being a wartime hospital flashed through her mind. Could it be that the horrific memories had never left, but were still lingering in every brick, every piece of rotten wood? That night, as Emma was getting ready to sleep, her phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message from a colleague, Sarah, who was also a teacher at the nursery. Sarah wrote briefly, "Did you hear anything on the ceiling of the classroom?" Emma froze, her heart pounding. She didn't want to answer, because she herself had heard the soft tapping, the light footsteps as if someone was walking above. Emma lay down, trying to close her eyes, but her mind was in darkness. In her dream, she saw Lily standing in the middle of the room, looking up at the ceiling. Above her, a dark shadow bent down. When Emma woke up with a start, cold sweat ran down her forehead. Her room was quiet, but for a moment, she heard what sounded like a child's laughter echoing in the corner of the wall. The next day, Emma decided to find out the truth. She waited until the babies were napping, quietly took an old wooden chair, and climbed up to check the crack in the ceiling. As soon as her hand touched it, a cold air came out, making Emma shiver all over. She shined her flashlight, and saw a small hole leading into the pitch-black darkness of the roof. Inside, dust was rising, but strangely, she heard a soft whisper. The voice was as small as the wind, like the mournful lullaby of souls who had not yet been released. Emma quickly retreated, her heart about to jump out of her chest. But just as she stepped onto the floor, Lily was already standing there. Her eyes were sparkling, her mouth smiling ecstatically. Lily whispered a sentence that made Emma speechless. They wanted her to see. Emma froze, unable to say a word. The air in the room was thick, colder than ever. She realized that what was happening was no longer an illusion, but the obvious truth. And Lily was just the door for everything to begin. The ghost story was slowly unfolding, and Emma knew that if she did not find the source, terrible things would continue to happen to all the children here. But just as she was about to step away, she heard a loud knocking from the ceiling. This time clearly, as if someone was trying to get out. The next morning, Emma walked into the nursery with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep. The knocking on the ceiling last night still haunted her, echoing in her head like a pounding drum. She told herself that she needed to be strong, that she couldn't let the children see the fear in her eyes. But as soon as she entered the room, she saw Lily sitting upright, her eyes looking up at the ceiling like every day, her smile wide and scary. Emma approached, trying to talk to Lily, but this time, what made her shiver was that she started to mumble strange words, her voice monotonous as if she was reciting some ancient lullaby. The other children immediately fell silent, looking at Lily with panicked eyes. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension, as if all the sounds outside were being swallowed. Emma hugged Lily's small shoulders, shaking her gently to make her stop. But at that moment, a loud noise echoed from the ceiling, as if something heavy had fallen, but it left no trace. Dust flew everywhere, making many children cry out. Emma hurried to calm them down, but her heart was pounding so hard that it almost burst at noon. Emma went to see Sarah to ask about what she had also heard. Sarah admitted that she had often felt people walking on the ceiling, especially at night when she stayed late. Sarah told her that another teacher had left the kindergarten abruptly after hearing sobbing from above, even though no one was there at the time. Those stories made Emma even more confused. That evening, Emma went to the town library. She wanted to know the true history of the building. After hours of searching through old records, she discovered that the kindergarten had been a makeshift medical ward during the war. Many orphans had been brought there, but most had died from disease and deprivation. The blurry report read, "More than a dozen children had died in the room above the current classroom." Emma's heart stopped. She remembered Lily's smile, the knocking, the terrified looks from the other children. It all came together in a horrifying picture. The young souls never left. And perhaps Lily was the only one they chose to communicate with. The next day, Emma tried something different. While the class was playing, she sat Lily in the middle of the room and asked softly, "Who are you looking at?" For the first time, Lily answered, her voice small but clear, "Your friend." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She continued, "What did he look like?" Lily tilted her head, her smile still on her face. He didn't want her to see. Immediately after that, all the lights in the room flickered. A cold wind blew through the hallway, even though the windows were closed. The curtains fluttered, and children's laughter echoed from the ceiling as if from afar. The children were crying in panic, and Emma stood there, frozen, unable to move. When the laughter faded, Emma could only hear her heart pounding. She carried Lily out, but her eyes were still fixed on the pitch-black darkness. Emma knew that things were getting out of hand. If she didn't find a way to stop them, the spirits would never stop. That night, Emma sat in her room, staring at the old documents she had found. They all pointed to a horrifying truth. The place where the children were playing had once been a room filled with pain and death. And now, the spirits seemed to want to come back, to be seen, to be heard. Emma didn't know what to believe anymore, but deep in her heart, she clearly felt a warning. The whispers of the children's spirits never ceased, and now they were coming closer and closer. After learning the truth from the old documents, Emma no longer looked at the kindergarten the same way. Every step she took through the hallway made her feel like she was entering a place filled with ghosts. The mottled walls, cracked ceilings, and creaking wooden floors all became reminders of the dark past. She wondered if she had the courage to continue living here. But then the clear eyes of the children, especially Lily, made her unable to leave. One afternoon, when it was about to rain, dark clouds covered the sky. Emma stayed in class later than usual. Sarah had gone home first, leaving her and Lily alone waiting for her parents to pick her up. The atmosphere was thick, the wind whistling through the cracks of the door like moans. Emma sat across from Lily, trying once again to strike up a conversation. "Can you tell me who your friend is?" This time Lily tilted her head, her eyes hypnotized. She was upstairs. She wanted to play with her. Emma shivered. She swallowed, looking up at the dark area on the ceiling. For a moment, she felt like a shadow had passed by, so fast that it was hard to tell if it was an illusion or reality. Immediately after, Lily burst out laughing, the laughter echoing throughout the room, making Emma's hair stand on end. Suddenly, the light bulb in the room flickered repeatedly. A buzzing sound came out, as if someone was trying to whisper through the phone. Then a heavy object fell from the ceiling right in front of Emma. It was an old, tattered doll, covered in dust, with one of its glass eyes broken. Emma was stunned. She was sure that this doll had never appeared in the classroom before. Lily happily picked up the doll, hugged it tightly, and mumbled as if she was talking to it. Emma trembled as she approached, trying to snatch the doll from her hands. But Lily screamed, her red eyes looking at Emma angrily. Emma had never seen this child react so violently. That night, Emma took the doll home, deciding to hide it. But when she put it in the drawer, she clearly heard a soft laugh coming from inside. Her sleep became fitful every time she closed her eyes. She saw the image of children wearing old clothes, standing in long rows, eyes staring at the ceiling, all laughing. When Emma woke up with a start, she found the doll lying on the bed right next to her. She screamed, threw it away, but the next morning when she went to class, Lily hugged the doll tightly as if she had never let go. Emma understood that she could not escape this bondage simply. There was some force that was gradually pulling her in, and Lily was just the door that opened the way. In the following days, many parents began to complain that their children had nightmares. Sitting up in the middle of the night, laughing like Lily. Rumors about the kindergarten spread quickly throughout the town. Some parents wanted to transfer their children, but were tied to work and had no other choice. Emma felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders more and more. One evening, while she and Sarah were staying behind to take inventory of the toys, they heard footsteps running across the ceiling. Sarah turned pale, and Emma could only stand there, frozen. But this time, they also heard the echoes of children's laughter. Not one, but many voices echoing in the cold space. Emma mustered up her courage, turned to Sarah and said, We have to know what's up there." Sarah shook her head in fear, but Emma's eyes were determined. She knew that the more she hid, the worse things would get. In the days after the doll fell from the ceiling, Emma could no longer sleep peacefully. Every night, she heard a soft tapping sound from above, like the sound of small fingers tapping on wood. Every time she entered the classroom, Emma felt like an invisible eye from somewhere on the ceiling was watching her every move. What made her tremble the most was Lily. She held the doll all the time, smiling and whispering to it, as if she were talking to a real friend. But the most terrifying thing was that many times Emma clearly heard a strange, childish voice answering, echoing from the empty space in the room. Sarah witnessed it with her own eyes once. Her face was pale, her hand tightly gripping Emma's wrist as she whispered, "That doll is not simple. I think it has a soul." Emma did not answer, but deep down she knew Sarah was right. The feeling of being surrounded by darkness and strange laughter gradually tightened her mind. That night, Emma climbed up to the attic once more. The flickering flashlight shone on dozens of old, dusty dolls. The broken glass eyes reflected a pale blue light, giving the feeling that dozens of empty gazes were watching her. Emma's heart pounded. She was about to turn back when she was startled to see Lily standing at the foot of the stairs, holding the doll, her eyes shining, her lips moving. "She wants to see you, immediately." From the ceiling came a rapid, powerful knocking sound, like dozens of tiny hands were beating at the same time. The room shook, cold air rushed in, the thick darkness swallowed every breath. Emma felt as if something was waiting to pull her deeper. That night, Emma returned to her small apartment with a heavy heart. She had just experienced a day where all her senses were tested to the limit. The old, broken doll still haunted her mind, its broken face and empty glass eyes staring straight at her from an endless void. Emma thought about throwing it far away, but a vague premonition told her that things would not be that simple. The doll seemed to have become an integral part of Lily and that gloomy nursery in the night rain. When the wind whistled through the window, Emma heard the familiar sound of children's laughter echoing throughout the room. This time, it was clearer, closer. She jumped up, turned on the light, but saw no one. She was alone in the room, but the walls seemed to shake slightly, as if someone had just run past. Emma hugged the blanket tightly, her heart pounding, cold sweat pouring out non-stop the next day. Emma decided to confide in Sarah. They sat in the break room, the dim light filtering through the old curtains. Sarah admitted that she had also seen the doll in her dreams more than once. In the dream, the doll sat on the teacher's desk, surrounded by lifeless children, laughing endlessly. Sarah insisted that some spirit had attached itself to the toy, and Lily was just a bridge to keep it alive. Emma was silent, her mind spinning. She felt like everything was getting out of control. But what scared her most was not herself, but the safety of the children. They were innocent, but were being dragged into this ghostly vortex. That afternoon, while the babies were napping, Emma heard a faint screeching sound coming from the ceiling. She looked up, and for the first time, she saw a strange mark. On the dusty wood, there were small handprints, like children's hands, clutching the ceiling. Emma was horrified, quickly closing her eyes. But when she opened them, the traces were still there, even more. Spreading all over the ceiling, Lily suddenly woke up from her sleep, her eyes wide open, staring up and laughing. The laughter echoed in the quiet room, making Emma tremble all over. The other children also woke up, one by one, crying out. The chaotic atmosphere seemed to explode. Emma quickly carried Lily out of the classroom, but her eyes did not leave the ceiling. That night, Emma decided to try something bold. She brought a wooden ladder, waited until everyone had left, and climbed up to the ceiling alone. The small hole from the day before now seemed wider. The cold wind blew out, carrying a pungent, musty smell. She shined a flashlight inside. The light shone into a dark space, where dozens of old dolls lay scattered, many of them missing arms, missing legs, and their eyes were broken. Emma was dizzy, her heart pounding violently. She realized that this was not just an ordinary attic, but seemed to contain the painful memories of dozens of young souls. In that moment, Emma clearly heard the sound of small footsteps running around. The sound of giggling echoed everywhere. The flashlight flickered, then went out. In the darkness, Emma felt cold hands touching her feet. She screamed, trying to climb down. Her heart felt like it was about to burst. When she landed on the floor, she trembled and looked around but saw nothing. However, Lily was standing right there, her face radiant, smiling ecstatically, as if she had just witnessed the most interesting joke in the world. Emma realized that the truth was slowly emerging. Those souls never disappeared. They were alive, existing in this nursery, and now they wanted Emma to be part of the game forever. After the night of exploring the attic, Emma was no longer herself. Her face was pale. Her eyes were always filled with anxiety. The invisible hands touching her legs, the giggles in the dark still lingered in her head. She tried to convince herself that it was just an illusion due to being too tired, but her heart knew very well that it was all real the next day. When Emma entered the classroom, she noticed a strange change. Not only Lily, but also a few other children began to look up at the ceiling, their eyes sparkling, their mouths smiling slightly. The laughter rang out simultaneously, gentle but creepy, making Emma's skin crawl. She quickly shouted for the children to focus on other games, but no one listened. The whole room seemed to be controlled by an invisible force. Sarah walked in, saw the scene. Her expression immediately changed. She whispered to Emma what we need to do before things get worse. Emma nodded, but she herself didn't know where to start. The spirits seemed to be getting stronger, no longer hiding, but gradually revealing themselves. At noon, when the children were sleeping, Emma decided to check the attic again. She brought the tape recorder and left it running in the dark. When she turned back to listen, her heart almost stopped. In the static, a child's voice whispered clearly, "We never left." Then a chorus of sobbing followed, one after another, a chorus of sorrow. Emma burst into tears, both sympathetic and horrified. She decided to tell Sarah everything she had found in the old files. Sarah was silent, then said that this town had long been rumored about mysterious deaths in the nursery, but no one dared to confirm it. They were afraid that once the truth was revealed, the spirits would become more violent. Emma clearly felt that this had happened. That night, when she returned home, she found her bedroom door ajar, even though it had been locked that morning. On the table, the old doll lay sprawled, its broken eyes staring straight at her. Next to it, a yellowed piece of paper appeared, with childish scribbles. "You are ours." Emma trembled and threw the paper away, but when she turned back, it was gone. She felt trapped in a circle with no way out. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the figures of children standing in long rows on the ceiling, holding broken dolls, their eyes staring down blankly. The cold laughter echoed as if it were hitting straight into her mind. The next morning, Emma decided to tell the story to an elderly person in the town. hoping to find a clue. The man shook his head, telling her not to interfere too much, because what was associated with that nursery no longer belonged to the human world. But Emma couldn't leave the children alone. The innocent children were being dragged deeper and deeper into the ghostly game. At night, when Emma tried to sleep, her dreams took her back to the attic. In her dream, the dolls opened their mouths and laughed, singing creepy lullabies. In the middle, Lily stood there, her eyes shining, holding the hand of a small figure. The figure raised its head, and Emma was stunned to realize that it was a reflection of herself as a child. Emma woke up with a start, her breathing rapid, her heart pounding. She knew that she was caught in this vortex, with no way out. Those young souls had chosen her, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. The sky that afternoon was a heavy grey. The wind howled through the dry trees. The leaves rustled like secret whispers. Emma entered the classroom, her heart heavy, because when many other children also began to look up and smile like Lily, she knew that things had gone beyond the endurance of a normal person. But she could not leave. Her responsibility to the children forced her to go to the end, even if there was only darkness ahead, while the children were playing. Emma noticed that Lily was no longer just smiling and looking up. She began to whisper, her lips moving continuously, as if talking to someone. The words were unclear, but sounded like echoes from the distant past. Immediately, several other children imitated her, mumbling meaningless sentences, their faces dull as if hypnotized. The sight made Emma cold, her limbs trembling, because she understood that the presence was no longer limited to Lily. It was spreading, taking over the children one by one. Sarah watched, her face pale, whispering to Emma that they needed to leave immediately. But Emma shook her head. If they left, the children would forever be prey to those spirits. They needed to find the cause, and perhaps the only way was to face it. Late in the afternoon, when the parents came to pick up their children, Emma suddenly noticed a mother who looked extremely haggard. She confessed that every night her child sat up in the middle of the night, smiling wildly at the empty space on the bedroom ceiling. The child even started drawing strange shapes, small figures with black eyes. Emma's fear grew, but at the same time her determination was strengthened. That night, Emma returned to the nursery alone. She held a candle in her hand, because the electricity in the building was unstable and unreliable. Each footstep echoed in the dark hallway like a drumbeat, each sound echoing as if dozens of footsteps were following. The cold wind blew down the hallway, carrying a musty smell and the faint warmth of souls that had not yet been released. Emma walked to the room where Lily usually sat. As soon as the old wooden door creaked open, the candle in her hand suddenly flickered violently, almost extinguished. In the dim light, Emma clearly saw tiny handprints printed densely on the wall, stretching up to the ceiling. She choked, trying to stay calm, walking to the center of the room. The children's laughter rang out again, this time not far away but right next to her ears, making Emma's whole body tremble. She looked up. For a moment, she saw the shadows of children hanging from the ceiling, their eyes lifeless, their faces distorted, half crying, half laughing. The sight made her scream, step back, the candle falling to the floor, extinguished. In the pitch blackness, Emma could only hear the sound of footsteps running around her, faster and faster, then suddenly silent. A childish voice rang out behind her. "You belong to us." Emma spun around, but saw only emptiness. Her chest tightened, her heart pounding. She realized she didn't have much time. The spirits were growing stronger, and soon they wouldn't just be on the ceiling. After the night of seeing the shadowy figures of children hanging from the ceiling, Emma no longer dared to enter the classroom alone. But responsibility forced her to return, because the children still needed her every day. That morning, when the pale sunlight filtered through the window, Emma entered the classroom with Sarah. The air was thick, unusually quiet, as if all sounds were swallowed. Lily was already sitting in the corner of the room, her eyes shining, hugging the old doll to her chest. She looked up at the ceiling and smiled her familiar smile. But this time, not only Lily, but all the other children also started laughing. The laughter echoed, mixing together into a distorted sound, reverberating through the four walls. Emma stood still, her heart pounding. Sarah trembled, holding Emma's hand tightly, whispering that this had gone too far. Emma gathered all her courage, walked towards Lily, softly calling her name. Immediately, all the children turned to look at Emma, their eyes empty, their smiles unusually long. The sight left Emma breathless. In that moment, she saw black hands reaching down from the ceiling, as if wanting to touch the children. Emma screamed, rushing forward to pull Lily out of her seat. But strangely, when she touched her, Lily froze like a statue, her eyes fixed on the darkness. That night, Emma decided to bring her camera. She took pictures of the ceiling every time she heard a noise. When she reviewed the photos, the first photo was just a dusty wooden ceiling. The second photo had faint light spots like small eyes. The third photo clearly showed a distorted child's face, sunken eyes, a wide smile. Emma's whole body was cold, her hands shaking so much that she almost dropped the camera. She showed the photo to Sarah. Sarah sobbed, saying that it was proof that the children's spirits still lingered here. But what was more frightening was that they not only wanted to be seen, but also wanted to possess the living children. Emma knew that if she didn't find a way to stop it, the entire nursery would become the permanent home of those spirits. That evening, Emma tried to find an old woman in town who was said to be knowledgeable about spirituality. The old woman looked at the photo and shook her head, saying that the wronged children's spirits would not leave easily. She advised Emma to find the object that was attached to them, because only by severing the bond could they be freed. Emma immediately thought of the attic full of dolls. Perhaps that place was the key. Returning to the nursery late at night, Emma walked up to the attic, where the old dolls were still scattered. She searched with trembling hands, and was surprised to discover a small wooden box with a thick, dusty lid. Opening it, inside were old, yellowed photos of children wearing hospital clothes, their eyes tired but still smiling. Emma recognized many of the faces in the photos as identical to the shadows she had seen on the ceiling. Her heart clenched, pain and sympathy mixed with horror. At that moment, the sound of footsteps echoed on the roof, then spread throughout the room. The flashlight in Emma's hand suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed everything. In the dense space, Emma clearly heard a child's laughter ringing close to her ear. "You will stay with us." Emma tried to run down, but the exit seemed to have disappeared. Only the ghostly laughter echoed everywhere. Emma trembled as she hugged the wooden box to her chest, her heart pounding as if it was about to burst. The darkness in the attic was thick. The children's laughter echoed everywhere, making every nerve in her body tense. She tried to calm down, but every step felt heavy, as if dozens of invisible hands were holding it back. The old photos in the box slid down, scattered on the floor. Emma saw the children's faces, their big, soulless eyes, their crooked smiles, just like the shadows she had seen hanging from the ceiling. She hurriedly gathered the photos. But at that moment, a whisper sounded right next to her ear. "We don't want to leave." The childish voice, cold as the winter wind, pierced straight into her chest, making Emma choke. The invisible hand touched her shoulder, making her startled and turn around. It was just empty space, but the eyes of the children in the photos seemed to be following her every move. Emma ran down the stairs, hugging the box tightly. When she stepped into the classroom, she saw Lily standing in the middle of the room, her eyes shining, holding the doll to her chest. She smiled mysteriously, whispering, "They won't forgive you." Emma was stunned. Her heart stopped. She stepped back, but her trembling legs didn't listen. Sarah appeared soon after. Her eyes panicked when she saw Emma holding the box. Sarah shouted for Emma to let it go, because the more she held it, the tighter the spirits would cling to it. But Emma couldn't, because she believed this was the only key to finding a way to escape. That night, Emma and Sarah opened the box together. In addition to the photos, they also found an old diary, the pages yellowed, the writing scribbled but still legible. The diary recorded the last days of the orphans who lived in this house. They wrote about pain, hunger, illness, and even the cries that echoed in the dark night. Finally, the diary page ended with a sentence: "If anyone finds us, please leave us alone." Emma burst into tears. She felt sorry for the forgotten souls of the children. But immediately, the air around her grew cold. The room shook, the windows banged as if someone was trying to break in. The cries of dozens of children echoed at the same time, making the space explode. Shadows appeared all over the room, surrounding Emma and Sarah. Emma grabbed Sarah's hand tightly, screaming, "We have to do something." Sarah screamed in despair. "They don't want to leave. They want us to stay with them." Shadowy hands reached out from the darkness, pulling hard on the wooden box, struggling fiercely. Emma tried to hold on, but her strength was gradually exhausted. In that moment, she realized that she only had two choices: let go to save her life, or continue to hold on to find the truth to the end. Emma closed her eyes tightly, took a deep breath, and decided to hold on to the box. Darkness immediately fell, covering the entire room. In the darkness, Emma heard creepy laughter, mournful cries, and even whispered voices calling her name. The room was plunged into pitch darkness. Emma clutched the wooden box to her chest. Her breathing quickened, beads of cold sweat rolling down her forehead. Sarah stood close by, her panicked eyes following the shadows moving around them. The sound of a baby crying echoed, mixed with giggles, creating a ghostly music that made both of their minds almost crumble. In a moment of despair, Emma opened the diary wide, hoping the old pages would reveal something. Indeed, on the last pages, she saw a few scribbled lines. "We don't want to disappear. We just want to be loved. Whoever holds this box, be our mother." Emma shivered, her hands shaking, because each word seemed to pierce straight into her mind, as if written just for her. Sarah panicked and snatched the diary, screaming that Emma shouldn't read anymore, but it was too late. Emma's head echoed with a childish voice, dozens of children's voices at the same time. "Mum, Mum, Mum." She collapsed, holding her head, her heart clenched. Sarah tried to pull her up, but Emma was increasingly enveloped in hallucinations. Before her eyes, the entire room had turned into a makeshift hospital. Skinny children, their clothes torn, sat crowded on the bed, all looking at her with crooked smiles. Emma screamed, but no sound escaped. The laughter echoed in her ears. She saw Lily standing among the children, hugging the doll tightly, her eyes shining like fire. Lily's lips moved. "You are ours." At that moment, Sarah swung her hand hard, throwing the wooden box to the floor. The box exploded, old photos flying everywhere, carried by the cold wind that blew wildly in the room. Shadows screamed, cries tore through the space. Emma held her ears collapsed, but then, in that moment, she realized that these spirits not only wanted to bind, but also to be freed. Emma summoned all her courage and shouted into the void, "I will help you, but please let the children go." The words echoed, the whole room seemed to quiet down. In a moment, the crying subsided, replaced by heavy sighs. Sarah trembled and pulled Emma out of the room, but as they reached the door, they saw dozens of small hands reaching out from the darkness, preventing them from leaving. Emma understood that the promise she had just made could not be just a word. She had entered into a deal with those spirits, and from now on, she could not turn back. After that night, Emma became a different person. In the eyes of everyone, she was still a gentle teacher, devoted to the children, but deep inside, her mind always echoed with the haunting call of Mum. Every night, when she closed her eyes, Emma saw the shadows of children surrounding her, their cold hands touching her skin. They did not leave, on the contrary. They became closer and closer, as if they wanted to blend into her body. Sarah noticed Emma's change. One time, while staying late, Sarah saw Emma sitting in the middle of the class, surrounded by empty chairs, but she still laughed and spoke softly as if she was talking to someone. Sarah shivered when she clearly heard children's voices responding in the quiet space, even though Emma was the only one in the room. When Sarah entered, Emma was startled, but her dreamy eyes and tired smile showed that those spirits had occupied a part of her daily life. The next night, Emma brought the wooden box to the house. She placed it in the middle of the room, lit candles around it as if preparing for a ritual. The old photos were arranged in a circle, the diary placed in the middle. As she read the yellowed words, the room began to shake slightly. The candles swayed, the fire flickered. The laughter of children rang out, this time no longer sporadic but in unison, like a whole crowd cheering. Emma closed her eyes, trying to stay calm, whispering, "I will help the children go, but please, leave the children in peace." Immediately, a cold wind blew, causing all the candles to go out. In the darkness, Emma felt a small hand squeeze hers. The feeling was so real that her heart ached. A childish voice rang out, "If you betray us, we will not forgive you." The next day, Emma returned to class with red eyes from lack of sleep. The children seemed to sense the change. There was no longer the strange, simultaneous laughter, but their eyes were still fixed on the ceiling, as if waiting for something. Lily ran to hug Emma, whispering, "My friend said she was going to be one of them." Emma froze, fear spreading throughout her body. Sarah pulled Emma outside, demanding the truth. Emma told everything she had experienced about the box, the photos, and the fateful promise. Sarah panicked, saying that Emma had gone too far. But Emma just shook her head, her eyes empty. "I didn't choose them. They chose me." That night, when Emma lay down, the rain pattered outside the window. In the darkness, she heard a soft lullaby, a sad but captivating melody. From the corner of the room, the shadows of children appeared, step by step, approaching her bed. Their faces were distorted, but their eyes were unusually bright. They reached out to Emma, saying in unison, "It's time for you to decide." Emma couldn't sleep all night. The lullaby continued to echo in her mind, its sad but persistent melody, hypnotizing her, leaving her exhausted. As dawn broke, Emma got out of bed with dark circles under her eyes. She looked around the room, where the old photos from the wooden box were still scattered all over the floor. But strangely, some of the photos were gone. Emma bent down, desperately searching, but instead, she discovered small handprints imprinted on the wooden floor, as if the children in the photos had walked out and wandered around right in her house, in the classroom. The atmosphere became heavier. The children no longer played like before. They often sat silently, their eyes lost, then suddenly looked up at the ceiling. Every time that happened, Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Sarah tried to tell Emma to give up, but Emma just shook her head. She knew that even if she ran away, those spirits would not spare her. They chose her to carry the promise. One afternoon, when the children were asleep, Emma walked down the hallway, feeling someone following her. She turned around. No one was there, but the small footsteps still echoed, rhythmic, slow. Emma shivered, walked faster, then suddenly heard a child's voice calling softly, "Mother." The sound echoed off the mottled wall, almost making her collapse, determined not to let herself sink into fear. Emma went to the home of a former employee who had worked at the field hospital before. The old man, his face full of wrinkles, sighed when she mentioned the orphanage. He told her that during the war years, many orphans had died in the building due to the plague. They died alone, with no one to care for them, only their old dolls for company. He emphasized, "They don't want to hurt anyone, but they won't disappear. They need someone to stay with." Emma returned home, her head spinning with those words. The children in the class continued to act strangely, but Lily became more and more different. She often whispered to the shadows, and sometimes Emma saw a light in Lily's eyes that did not belong to this world. One afternoon, as Emma bent down to put away her toys, Lily approached, put her hand on the wooden box Emma had hidden in the drawer, and said, "They are waiting." That evening, Emma decided to try a ritual to free the spirits. She brought the wooden box to the center of the room, arranged the photos around it in a circle, and lit candles in the four corners. She recited a prayer aloud, asking for the souls of the children to rest in peace. But as soon as she finished the last sentence, the candle went out, and darkness engulfed the room. The children's cries erupted, louder than ever, shaking the space. Emma collapsed, hugging the wooden box tightly, muttering a prayer for forgiveness. In the darkness, a small figure stepped out. It was a little girl with empty eyes and a thin face. The child approached Emma, touched her cheek with his cold hand, and said, "If you want us to leave, you have to become a part of us first." Emma panicked, tears welling up. She realized that to keep her promise, she would have to give up more than she thought. That night, Emma sat alone in the classroom, the yellow light from the old light bulb reflected on the mottled tile floor. The atmosphere was suffocatingly quiet, only the ticking of the clock echoed. On the table, the old wooden box lay still. Inside were the yellowed photos she had collected. Each child's face in the photo was smiling, but the more Emma looked, the more horrifying the distortion became. She remembered the little girl's spirit whispering, "If you want us to leave, you must become a part of us first." Fear gripped her mind, but Emma knew she could not turn back. The children in the class were increasingly affected. They muttered, sat still for hours, and sometimes looked up at the ceiling and laughed out loud. The whole town began to gossip. Parents were confused. Many wanted to withdraw their children from the class. Sarah repeatedly advised Emma to leave everything, but Emma only replied warily, "If I leave, they will follow me. No one can escape." One rainy night, Emma decided to try another ritual. She found an old book in the library about ancient rituals, which recorded how to pray for the souls of children who had not yet rested. She prepared candles, salt, and a small mirror. In the dark room, she sat in the middle of the salt circle, lit candles around it, placed the mirror in front of her, and began to recite prayers. At first, the room was silent, only the sound of rain hitting the glass door. But then, in the mirror, Emma saw small shadows behind her. They kept coming closer, their faces pale, their eyes black, their mouths cracked open. Emma trembled. Her voice was broken, but she still tried to continue. Immediately, the shadows cried. The sound echoed throughout the room, causing the candle to shake violently in an instant. The mirror cracked, emitting a piercing sound. Emma was startled. The mirror shattered, and from it, a cold air blew out, covering the entire room. A childish laughter rang out right next to her ears. "No one can save you." Emma hugged the box tightly, tears streaming down her face. Her heart felt like it was being squeezed. The next morning, when Sarah came to find Emma sitting motionless in the classroom, her eyes red, her hands still holding the wooden box, Emma looked at Sarah, her voice hoarse. "They want me to stay, but I can't abandon the children." Sarah burst into tears, not knowing whether to advise or run away. They both understood that this game was not over. Those spirits were getting stronger and stronger, and now they were not only confined in the nursery, but also starting to step out into the outside world. The rain that lasted all night made the damp air seep into every corner of the classroom. Emma came to the nursery the next morning, her face haggard, her eyes dark from lack of sleep. Sarah looked at her worriedly, but did not dare to say anything more. The children were sitting and playing, but the atmosphere was completely different from usual. They were strangely quiet, not laughing, not screaming, just sitting still like lifeless dolls. Emma could clearly feel the change, as if souls had entered their bodies. When Emma walked closer to Lily, she looked up at her, her eyes shining, her mouth forming a familiar smile. Lily put the old doll on the table, whispering, "They are waiting for us." Immediately, the other children looked up at the ceiling, their eyes lifeless, their lips moving rhythmically as if reciting an invisible spell. The whole room echoed with a creepy whispering sound, making Emma stand still, her heart pounding. That night, Emma decided to take the wooden box to the small forest behind the town, where many victims of the war had been hastily buried. She hoped to return it to its rightful place. Sarah followed, flashlight in hand, breathing heavily with fear. The cold wind blew through the forest, dry leaves rustling underfoot, creating a creepy sound like hundreds of small footsteps were running after them. They stopped by an old tree, digging a hole to bury the box. But as soon as Emma put it on the ground, the wind howled violently. Darkness covered the entire forest. From all sides, children's laughter echoed, getting closer and closer. Sarah trembled, shouting, "They don't want to leave, Emma." Indeed, the box shook violently, making a rattling sound as if someone was pounding it from inside. Emma gritted her teeth, trying to cover it with dirt. But suddenly, Lily appeared right behind them, her face pale, her eyes shining in the darkness. "If you bury it, they'll be angry," she whispered. "Don't you understand? They don't want to leave you." Emma froze, the dirt falling from her hands. Sarah tugged Emma away, but the sound of children's footsteps echoed through the woods. Surrounding them in a panic, Emma fell, the box flying open. Old photos flew around them like a whirlwind. Shadows of children appeared in waves, their faces distorted, their eyes lifeless. One approached, placed a cold hand on Emma's cheek, and whispered, "Don't leave us." Emma burst into tears, her trembling hands hugging the box. She realized that the more she tried to escape, the deeper she was being pulled. These spirits refused to leave, because now she was the only one they clung to. The rain that lasted all night made the damp air seep into every corner of the classroom. Emma came to the nursery the next morning, her face haggard, her eyes dark from lack of sleep. Sarah looked at her worriedly, but did not dare to say anything more. The children were sitting and playing, but the atmosphere was completely different from usual. They were strangely quiet, not laughing, not screaming, just sitting still like lifeless dolls. Emma could clearly feel the change, as if souls had entered their bodies. When Emma walked closer to Lily, she looked up at her, her eyes shining, her mouth forming a familiar smile. Lily put the old doll on the table, whispering, "They are waiting for us," immediately. The other children looked up at the ceiling, their eyes lifeless, their lips moving rhythmically as if reciting an invisible spell. The whole room echoed with a creepy whispering sound, making Emma stand still, her heart pounding. That night, Emma decided to take the wooden box to the small forest behind the town, where many victims of the war had been hastily buried. She hoped to return it to its rightful place. Sarah followed, flashlight in hand, breathing heavily with fear. The cold wind blew through the forest, dry leaves rustling underfoot, creating a creepy sound like hundreds of small footsteps were running after them. They stopped by an old tree, digging a hole to bury the box. But as soon as Emma put it on the ground, the wind howled violently. Darkness covered the entire forest. From all sides, children's laughter echoed, getting closer and closer. Sarah trembled, shouting, "They don't want to leave, Emma." Indeed, the box shook violently, making a rattling sound as if someone was pounding it from inside. Emma gritted her teeth, trying to cover it with dirt. But suddenly, Lily appeared right behind them, her face pale, her eyes shining in the darkness. "If you bury it, they'll be angry," she whispered. "Don't you understand? They don't want to leave you." Emma froze, the dirt falling from her hands. Sarah tugged Emma away, but the sound of children's footsteps echoed through the woods. Surrounding them in a panic, Emma fell, the box flying open. Old photos flew around them like a whirlwind. Shadows of children appeared in waves, their faces distorted, their eyes lifeless. One approached, placed a cold hand on Emma's cheek, and whispered, "Don't leave us." Emma burst into tears, her trembling hands hugging the box. She realized that the more she tried to escape, the deeper she was being pulled. These spirits refused to leave, because now she was the only one they clung to. In the days after the incident in the forest, Emma could hardly distinguish between reality and illusion. She taught in a daze. Her eyes were absent-minded, sometimes suddenly stopping mid-sentence as if she were listening to an invisible voice. The children in the class became increasingly strange. They spoke less, laughed less. Instead, they often whispered something to the empty space on the ceiling. Sarah watched Emma in extreme anxiety, realizing that her friend was gradually being devoured by the spirits. One afternoon, when the weak sunlight gradually faded behind the glass window, Emma saw Lily approaching, holding the old, broken doll in her arms. She looked up at the ceiling and whispered, "They said you have to stay tonight." Emma was stunned, feeling as if the blood in her body had frozen. Sarah heard and pulled Emma out, pleading, "We can't stay here any longer. You have to leave before it's too late." But Emma was silent. Her eyes were empty, her lips trembling as she whispered, "I promised." That night, Emma returned to the nursery alone. The room was dark, with only the pale moonlight shining through the window. On the table, the wooden box opened by itself, and old photos automatically floated in the air. Children's laughter rang out everywhere, this time no longer sporadically but in unison, like a distorted choir. Emma knelt down, tears rolling down. She said loudly, "I'm here. What do you want from me?" The space shook, the ceiling seemed to crack, and dust fell from it. From the darkness, the shadows of children poured down, their faces distorted, their eyes black. They surrounded Emma, their cold hands touching her skin. A childish voice rang out close to her ear. "We want you to stay forever," Emma choked, trying to retreat, but there was no way out. Suddenly, Sarah rushed in, holding a silver bell she found from the old church in town. Sarah shook the bell vigorously, the sound echoing throughout the room. Instantly, the shadows screamed, shrinking as if burned. Emma looked up, her eyes filled with tears, looking at Sarah in amazement. But as the shadows faded, a little girl remained, her eyes shining, her voice cold. "You promised. No one can save you from this promise." Emma collapsed, her whole body shaking. Sarah grabbed her hand and pulled her away, but Emma knew that the bond was engraved deep in her soul. She could not escape, could not betray the promise, because those souls would find her wherever she went. After the night Sarah used the silver bell to chase away the ghosts, Emma thought things would calm down. But when she looked in the bathroom mirror the next morning, the reflection took her breath away. Instead of the familiar, tired face, she saw herself standing in a circle of children, all holding her hand, their eyes blank but their mouths smiling eerily. Emma fell to her knees, her heart pounding. When she raised her head again, the mirror was back to normal. But Emma knew for sure it wasn't an illusion. She began to feel their presence everywhere. In class, when she wrote on the chalkboard, she heard a whisper right behind her neck. When she sat down to eat, a spoon fell by itself, leaving a small handprint on the table. At night, Emma often woke up, startled by the feeling that someone was standing right next to her bed, watching her every breath. These signs proved that the link to the child's soul was imprinted in her body. Sarah tried to convince Emma to leave town, but Emma shook her head. She knew that wherever she went, the children would follow. The nursery was only the starting point, but now she had become their new home. One afternoon, while the children were playing, Lily approached, her eyes sparkling with a strange light. She whispered, "You're like us now," Emma choked, feeling the words as a sentence. In desperation, Emma went to the old church, where Sarah had taken the silver bell. The frail priest shook his head when he heard Emma's story, then pointed to the crack in the wall where ancient characters were carved. He said that this was the mark that had imprisoned the souls of children since the war. When the nursery was built, the boundary was broken, and the souls poured out again. Emma was silent, feeling that everything had gone beyond what normal people could bear. That night, Emma returned to class, carrying the silver bell. She sat in the middle of the empty room, surrounded by old photos. When she rang the bell, the sound echoed everywhere, but this time, instead of running away, the shadows of children rushed down, the cries and laughter echoing, more intense than ever. A child approached, eyes shining, screaming, "No one can save you. You are ours." Emma fell, the bell falling from her hand. In that moment, she felt small hands grip her wrist, pulling her into the dark vortex. Fear filled her whole body, but inside, a thought flashed. If she couldn't break free, maybe she would have to find a way to negotiate again. Emma sat on the floor, the silver bell rolling in the darkness. Her breathing quickened, her vision blurred by the flickering images around her. Dozens of childish shadows surrounded her, their faces distorted, their eyes as black as deep pits. They whispered, their childish voices echoing throughout the room. "Mother promised. Mother cannot betray." The words repeated over and over, pounding like a hammer, making Emma's mind almost explode. Sarah rushed to pull Emma up, but an invisible hand held her leg tightly. In that moment, Emma saw Lily step out of the darkness. Her eyes were bright, her smile strange, holding the doll tightly. Lily whispered, "If you leave them alone, they will spare the children. But you must stay." Emma froze, feeling her heart torn in two. She knew that sacrificing herself was the only way, but the fear of being swallowed by the darkness made her hesitate. Sarah trembled and shouted, "Emma, don't listen to them. They are using you." But Emma clearly felt that the spirits not only wanted to use her, but also needed a place to stay. She was the bridge they chose, and without her, they would continue to haunt the children. In a moment of despair, Emma closed her eyes, clutching the wooden box tightly in her hands. She screamed, "If you want me to stay, let the children go." The darkness stopped, the childish voices fell silent. A deathly silence enveloped the room. Then, from the darkness, a little girl stepped out, her face pale, her eyes sunken. She nodded slowly, whispering, "We will keep our word, if you keep your word." Emma collapsed, her whole body trembling. Sarah hugged her, sobbing. But Emma knew that from this moment, her fate was tied to those spirits. There was no turning back. She could only hope that her sacrifice would be enough to free the innocent children. Outside the window, thunder rumbled, the sky split with cold white lightning. The room shook violently, the shadows melted into the darkness, disappearing. Only a soft laugh echoed in Emma's ears, a reminder that this choice was etched into her soul. The room after the storm was filled with a suffocating silence. Emma sat on the floor, the wooden box in her hands, her breathing weak, her eyes empty. Sarah knelt down beside her, grabbed Emma's shoulders and sobbed. But Emma only shook her head weakly, her mouth moving. "It's over. The children are free." The next day, the atmosphere in the classroom changed strangely. The children no longer looked up at the ceiling in unison. They laughed, they played as if nothing had happened. Those innocent smiles made Sarah cry with relief, but Emma did not. On her face, fatigue was etched deeply. Her eyes were lifeless, as if she had exchanged something that could never be recovered. When the class ended, Emma sat alone in the classroom. The wind blew through the window, the curtains fluttered. For a moment, she heard the soft footsteps of children behind her. She didn't turn around, just closed her eyes, letting the soft laughter ring in her ears. The spirits had kept their promise to let the children go, but in return, they kept Emma with them forever. Sarah stood outside the hallway, looking in, her heart heavy. She knew her friend was no longer the same. Although Emma's body was still here, her soul had entered another world. From now on, she was the one who kept the wooden box, the mother that the young souls had chosen. Night fell. When the moonlight spread across the kindergarten hallway, Emma sat in the middle of the classroom, hugging the box to her chest, softly singing a song that no one had ever heard. The lullaby, mixed with the children's laughter, echoed everywhere, creating a cold, creepy atmosphere. The classroom door gently closed, leaving a deep darkness where Emma and the souls would forever exist together.